Hey everyone, thanks for coming. We're gonna keep allowing more participants to enter the webinar and we'll get going in a few minutes. So thank you all for joining. All right, well, I think we're gonna get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation of the Kirk webinar series entitled Conducting Waste Audits. My name is Travis Blomberg and I am a Kirk board member. I'm also the Campus Resource Coordinator at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'll be your moderator today. I'd like to thank Leanna Hauser, also a Kirk board member who is providing support on the back end. I am thrilled to see so many of you here. We have over 100 participants here and we have more trickling in as we speak. So if this is your first webinar and you are not familiar with Kirk, the College and University Recycling Coalition, let me welcome you. Kirk represents over 1,000 sustainability champions in higher education, from custodial, grounds, and recycling supervisors to student leaders to sustainability coordinators and managers. Kirk supports you, our fellow waste reduction and diversion champions at colleges and universities across North America to advance sustainable materials management in higher education and foster the exchange of best practices to achieve zero waste and build a circular economy. Today's program is part of our free Kirk webinar series, which is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational and educational topics related to collegiate recycling and sustainable materials management. Today's program is our third webinar in our 2023 series. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, you can visit Zoom Support Center by visiting support.zoom.us. To avoid background noise, we've placed all but our panelists' lines on mute. We encourage you to submit questions at any time by using the Q&A section, not the chat box. So again, if you want to ask any questions, please submit that to the Q&A section. And we will read as many of these as possible out loud when we get to the panel discussion after each of the presentations. If we are not able to get to your question live, our panelists will try to respond in writing, and we welcome you to use the chat function for general comments or to chat with other attendees. Copies of today's presentation slides will be available to download and record, and a recording available to stream within the next week or so from the Kirk website at www.kirk3r.org. So now on to the show. Kirk relies on the generous sponsorship from businesses and organizations, and I want to thank our sponsor, greeneducation.us, for their support of today's webinar. Please welcome Jill Danello. As the Manager of Education Programs and for greeneducation.us, Jill Danello oversees the certification in Sustainable Resource Management Program, the only nationally recognized certification program backed by the National Recycling Coalition Standards Board. Continue education CEUs offered through San Jose State University. Jill was a founding member of the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, which is now the TRUE through the GBCI, and is an active zero waste consultant with Go to Zero Strategies and Grow to Zero Farms. So Jill, take it away.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much to Kirk for allowing us to present today. I am getting a message that I can't share my screen. Let me try again here. Here we go. Great. Thanks so much for that introduction. Well, I'm super excited to hear that there are so many people registered for today's webinar. Maybe many of you, like me, are have already gone from not thinking at all about what's going into your waste stream to having looking in the trash be one of your hobbies to talk about at cocktail parties, and your vacation photo streams, including recycling systems from all over the world. But if not, if you're new to the field, just know that it's a universal affliction and something that you have to look forward to. So I'm here today with Green Education. We were born actually from a Green Jobs grant about a decade ago, where a federal study was done to look at the field of sustainable resource management, and it was identified that at the time there was not any universal standards, there wasn't training easily available, and that there was going to be exponential growth in the field. And I think everybody who's registered today has shown that the field certainly is expanding as the world struggles to work towards building a more circular economy. So we were launched in college, a couple of colleges across California, and then we were brought online in 2017. So we continue to strive to bring together the experts in the field together to discuss with each other, and to bring new people in to really focus on zero waste, sustainable resource management, and how we do a better job at managing the world's resources. A few of the opportunities that we have coming up next week, we actually have a workshop on purchasing for environmentally preferred purchasing for zero waste. So kind of the other side today, you're going to be looking at the digging through the waste bin and looking at zero waste opportunities. We will be looking upstream, so kind of digging into purchasing and invoices and the products going into the waste stream. In October, we will be having a course on reuse strategies for zero waste communities. That will be a pre-recorded course with then a live discussion section on so much has been happening in the last 5 years. So really showcasing the explosion of opportunities there. And then in November, we have a workshop specifically dealing with California legislation for sustainable resource management. We have a few other things coming up. We'll have one on reuse and construction, and a lot on SB 1383, our California policies that are rolling out. But that's just a few things that are coming up. We have many courses and pre-recorded webinars available in our learning catalog. You can explore those through links on our websites. We design our content to be available kind of at your pace, at your place, zero waste delivery of learning content. And our most popular program is our Certificate in Sustainable Resource Management that gets you access to our full catalog of online learning, as well as live course discussions, assignments that are reviewed by facilitators and experts in the field to help you put that learning into practice in the field. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it because I'm going to just show you this quick video that tells you a little bit more about that program, if that's something you might be interested in.
Combines your passion for sustainability with the desire to lead solutions-oriented projects? Do you enjoy working on teams that leverage government, business, and citizen action towards climate change-defying programs? Do you want to play a part in building the circular economy? If you want to show that you are in the know, become a certified sustainable resource management professional through greeneducation.us. At greeneducation.us, we make it easy for zero waste and recycling professionals to learn from industry leaders in a zero waste online environment. The CSRMP peer developed through a nationwide process involving hundreds of practitioners and experts under the guidance of the National Recycling Coalition National Standards Board. Completion earns you 3 continuing education units from San Jose State University. In just 1 semester of study, you will engage in 30 hours of active online learning, interact with course instructors, network with students, alumni, and professionals in the field, gain access to dozens of well-curated resources to explore topics in depth, pass the CSRMP exam. The CSRMP covers the 26 standard learning objectives meeting the national standard. You'll learn why and how sustainable resource management is key to addressing climate disruption. You'll discover how to use policy and programs to change individual and institutional behavior. You'll end the program with key insights and new career opportunities within the growing circular economy. Contact us at info@greeneducation.us to set up a time to discuss if the CSRMP is the right next move for you. Are you interested in a career that...
Great. Well, thank you. So we are pleased to offer to Kirk members, especially attending this webinar, a huge discount for our fall semester. If you are able to register for the program by August 1st, we are happy to pay your continuing education unit registration fees directly to San Jose State for you. It's a $270 value for the program. If you're interested, please feel free to sign up for an informational session on June 20th at 9 a.m. You can join our mailing list at Green Education or just contact me directly at jill@greeneducation.us. Thanks so much. I'll let you get back to your previously scheduled programming.
Awesome. Thank you, Jill. As Jill and her team know firsthand, waste audits are a vital tool for identifying opportunities for waste reduction, recycling, and overall improvement of waste management systems. Also referred to as waste characterization studies, waste audits are systematic assessments conducted to evaluate and analyze the composition and quantity of waste generated by an organization. Today's panel will discuss how they conduct waste audits at their universities. Today, we will hear from Jill Burchell and Amy Ellsworth of the University of Arizona and Tyler Kuss from Valparaiso University. First, we will hear from Jill and Amy. Jill Burchell, PhD, has spearheaded the University of Arizona's Housing and Residential Life Sustainability Program since 2009. Dr. Burchell has presented nationally on topics such as waste audits, student advocacy programs, environmental justice simulations, and disability-related topics. She has several publications, including a piece on satisfaction with green-related residence halls. Dr. Burchell has been honored with both the University of Arizona's University Citizen Award and the American College Personnel Association's Champion of Sustainability Award. Amy Ellsworth is a recent graduate of the University of Arizona with a bachelor's degree in English. During her time as an undergrad, she worked for the university as a waste auditor, collecting data about recycling, and finding new ways to communicate recycling information to fellow students. She's passionate about recycling, sustainability, social justice, and community engagement. In the fall, she will be pursuing a master's degree in library and information sciences. Take it away, Jill and Amy.
Great. Let me try and, it won't let me share. There we go.
All you now.
Beautiful. Thank you. There we go. Great. Well, hello, welcome everybody. I would like to start, please, by respectfully acknowledging that the University of Arizona sits on lands and territories of Indigenous people, and more specifically, our Tucson campus is on lands of the Tohono O'odham and Yaqui peoples. Next, I'd like to give you a little context for our university. So there's over 50,000 students at this Research One university, including both graduate and undergraduate students. On campus, close to 8,000 students live in our dorms. Students are spread across 23 undergraduate dorms and 1 graduate building. The makeup of the halls is majority freshmen. In fact, over 80% of the students in our dorms are first-time, full-time freshmen. We collect our recycling mainly at exterior waste collection sites. Some buildings have 1 or 2 interior recycling center options, but that is not consistent. Our data is collected from the exterior containers co-located with trash bins. So let's transition to talking about our longstanding audit program in housing and residential life. We've actually been systematically studying our residential waste stream for more than a decade. So the program can actually be broken up into several phases over time. During phase 1, we sorted and weighed components in a very traditional recycling audit fashion. We weighed the bags to get an average bag weight of a 56-gallon liner filled with recycling. And then we separated the contents by material type, plastics, metals, etc., and weighed the component parts. What did we learn in this phase of the program? Well, one surprising finding was that very little metal is actually getting recycled on our campus. It made up less than 2% of our recycling. So focusing our efforts on campaigns and education around metals really would have very little impact for us. So as a result, we eliminated signage specifically related to soda cans and other metals to limit clutter. Additionally, we learned the average weight of a full bag of Arizona residential recycling is 6.76 pounds, which is actually lighter than I expected. But that allowed us to begin estimating recycling weights for all of housing for the first time by counting the number of full bags we collected. Moving on to phase 2, we decided we needed a fuller picture of our waste composition. Phase 2 is all about understanding diversion. So what we learned is over 30% of what our students are throwing away is actually recyclable. And about 33% of the contents were compostable. So that meant actually less than 40% of the trash that was being thrown away is only suited for the landfill. A lot of opportunities there. Finally, let's shift our focus to the current phase of the Audits program, phase 3. This phase began in 2018 after the China sword, and changes to the global recycling market were giving contamination new importance. The goal is no longer to get as much recycling as possible by volume, but rather now the focus is on clean materials and quality of recycling. So as part of this shift, we're no longer weighing anything. The goal is to respond to problems in real time, addressing issues on the ground as they happen. And thankfully, we found that our signage and contamination interventions are effective in both the short and long term. So now you're going to hear a little bit more about the specifics of this phase as the presentation continues.
Yeah, so phase 3 has simplified our audit so that the job can be done by just one person, which has been me for the past 1.5 years, in just a couple hours a week. When I go out to do the audit, I just take a tracking sheet that looks something like exactly like this tracking sheet on the right here. I take a writing utensil, signage, which you will see examples of on the next slide, tape to hang that signage, and just some PPE. Our method of our audit now It doesn't require getting very messy though, and it isn't especially physically demanding. This new phase has made our audit more of a research position than manual labor. We take just a visual estimation of the rates of contamination at each building, which we have 23 buildings every week. So it's just based off of what we can see on the top of each can, basically. So this ends up going by pretty quickly, even though we check every single bin. I tend to do this with like a circle method, which I can kind of demonstrate here with this picture of a can on the left. I'd like divide what I'm seeing into rough sections. So for this bin, I would visualize about 5 circles on top of it, and then see that one of those circles is filled with contamination, this Cheetos bag, and then right next to it on the left, something that looks like a water bottle case packaging. So I would say this is about 20% contaminated, 1 out of the 5. And then after recording that numerical data, I would record our categorical data. So specifically writing down each main contaminant that I'm seeing in the bin. Not too specific. We tend to categorize things, so I wouldn't write Cheetos bag, I would write wrappers, by kind of grouping things into categories that we've been seeing over time, and allows us to observe trends, and then we end up with just more useful thematic information, which then informs our educational efforts. But before all those educational efforts, we put the data to use immediately by hanging signage. So each week as the recycling auditor, I put up new signage that's tailored exactly to the issues that I'm seeing at that location that week. So for example, for the bin pictured on the last slide, I might put up 1 or both of these posters, this water bottle case poster or this wrappers poster. We tend to keep our signage pretty simple so we don't muddy our message, not too wordy. We found that also using real images is more effective than using clip art images. We just use programs like Canva, PowerPoint, Adobe Illustrator. I also always laminate our posters to minimize wear and kind of weatherproof the signs when it rains and it's pretty sunny here, so they get damaged by the sun. And then I hang these posters. We hang our posters in 2 ways. Our first method is putting them in these plastic sign holders that we've nailed up to the walls above the cans. And then I also tape them directly onto the bins. Here's a couple photos of some of our recycling locations. It's not pictured well here, but we tend to have one of those tailored educational posters on basically every bin. But you can also see here our more general signage, so which has like more comprehensive information about what can and can't be recycled. So we have that consistency throughout. The signage does take some maintenance. As you can see in this photo on the right, we've definitely had problems arise in maintaining our recycling sites and signage. These sign holders do break and get damaged. This particular damage happened when some unlaminated signage ended up in our sign holders, and then it rained and the paper got plastered to the sign holder. So our signage and the signage holders do get damaged and dirtied. Posters fall off cans, tape comes loose, and I have to retape things. So that's something to prepare for. If you end up implementing an audit role like this, my weeks in the audit role typically involve some of this general maintenance of the signage and the site. But for the most part, it's not too messy, and I'm able to focus on the research component and the data collection.
Great. Next, let's talk about how we analyze the data and what we've discovered. So we've been tracking our main contaminants for some time. We track these by category to help us make observations. You can see the categories listed here. They're in order of frequency they appeared in our recycling last year, left to right and top to bottom. So you can see the kinds of stuff we track. There are a number of different categories of soft plastic materials, including water bottle packaging, plastic bags, bagged recycling, mail packaging, wrappers, and soft plastics other. This other category are things like miscellaneous packaging, red bags, cereal bags, the like. But soft plastic is our biggest problem. Soft plastics make up about 40% of all of our contamination. There's also a few categories you might not immediately think of, like mixed materials, such as a plastic hot metal air freshener can, or items that are too small. I will note that when we do our main analysis, we combine napkins, tissues, and paper towels, and we combine too small utensils and straws, but we do track all of those things separately. The contaminants on the left were regularly and found in significant numbers in our dorm recycling. So those are really our big problem areas. To help with the tracking, Amy put together a wonderful template that we're going to share with you in our take-home resources. It has all kinds of categories and formulas to make data analysis easier. So there's various sheets. There's a master page like you see in this screenshot that takes a look at contamination percentage, main contaminants, what posters were used. There's other sheets to track contaminants by building or individual instances of contamination, as well as several that deal with contamination percentages in the aggregate, as well as helping us track some responsiveness to our educational initiatives, like our signage placement and interventions like Instagram posts. So we will share this template with you to help make tracking contamination on your campus a little easier. One of the things we've prioritized tracking consistently is the effectiveness of our rotating tailored signage that we're putting up every week. Amy would record which specific poster she put up, and then the following week she would note whether or not those same contaminants were still there. So the numbers show our bin signage to be effective. Last year, new posters put up were effective about 73% of the time, meaning that meaning that after following placement, the contaminant the poster addressed was absent the following week when we went back and looked. And this data is really consistent with the previous year. So this has kept us moving forward with our bin signage component of this program because it's working. Another thing we tracked was the effectiveness of various signage placement, particularly on the wall versus on the lid of the bin. We did a lot of tracking in this area. In the fall, we found posters put on the cans were effective about 77% of the time, and posters put on the wall above the can about 76% of the time. We consider this a negligible difference, and therefore we do both methods interchangeably and simultaneously. Actually, we're going to stop tracking this because our results have been so consistent. We feel comfortable that the placement either above or on the bin will still be effective. A couple other things we've learned along the way. Our data, we've determined that in buildings that have specific plastic bag collection bins, they actually don't show less plastic contamination. We have some bins like what's pictured here in the top left next to our regular mixed recycling toters in some of our buildings. Not all though. And in those buildings, we do not show less soft plastic or plastic bag contamination compared to the buildings that don't have those collections. So we suspect this is due to the genuine confusion around soft plastics. Also, we found that different site setups impact contamination levels. Our students seem to show a clear preference for the 96-gallon toter recycling containers that look like a traditional recycling bin, like what's pictured here on the lower left, as compared to the 3-yard front-loading dumpster pictured on the right. Also, what's first when you open the door to the trash enclosure? Is it trash or recycling? Recycling used to be about making it convenient, and now we need recycling to be purposeful. So in places where recycling comes before trash, as you enter the waste collection site, our recycling was consistently contaminated. So we recommend you put recycling further from the entrance than the trash. So now we'd like to discuss some other ways we use the data that we collect.
Yeah. Beyond using our audit data to make these observations that Jill mentioned and to inform our tailored weekly signage, here's some of what we do with what we collect. Since we collect dorm-specific data, we do some dorm-specific interventions. So in the auditor role, I work with each building director to address their specific recurring contamination problems. We've created a drive with resources for building directors, social media posts they can put on their account, bulletin boards they can post throughout their building. Some examples of sustainability related emails and email blurbs and newsletter blurbs, posters, and then just some lobby programs, just a bunch of stuff they can choose from. Our audits also give us our data for our recycling competitions. Been It to Win It is our own new version of Recyclemania. In our competition, dorms are ranked based on their rates of contamination for a span of several weeks. So our audit data gives us these rankings, and it also informs our educational material that goes alongside our competitions. It tells us which contamination issues we should be focusing on throughout the competition. Same thing with our quizzes and surveys. Our audit data informs us of which questions to ask. Our quizzes and surveys also give us a lot of interesting data that we can't get from the audit alone. I've included our most recent survey summary and the drive we're going to share with you all with resources, which has some pretty useful information, I think. I'll share some highlights briefly right now. As shown in this pie chart on the right, almost 60% of our over 500 respondents to the survey reported learning how to recycle from posters and flyers and on the bins, which also mostly means posters and flyers, as opposed to any other of these avenues. So that told us that our signage efforts are worthwhile. In performing the audits, I was also curious about what's informing students' recycling behavior, and if people think it's better to risk it contaminating the recycling rather than throw it in the trash. So this question featured at the bottom here told us that there are still a lot of students putting things in the bins that they aren't sure are recyclable, people thinking that it's better to take that risk. Throughout the survey, students also expressed a lot of concern about recycling contamination and just confusion about recycling in general and what to recycle, which gave us some hope that students do care about the state of recycling. Others expressed something different, that recycling is common sense, which was interesting to us. Underlying a lot of the responses was this incorrect assumption that recycling is the same everywhere, that it's common sense, or that you could learn how to recycle in your home state and never learn again because it's going to be the same everywhere. We gained a lot from the survey, and our audit data really helped inform us about which questions we should be asking and which would be useful to us.
So coming soon, we have phase 4 of our program. Housing was actually awarded money by the U Arizona Campus Sustainability Fund for our CATS Optimizing Recycling Education Grant Program. We're in the process of hiring a graduate assistant to lead research into the effectiveness of our recycling initiatives and create a data-driven replicable plan to teach recycling every fall. Our funding includes 2 undergraduates who will be collecting data through the contamination checks we've discussed and provide recycling education. It's a 2-year project also funded by Housing and Residential Life. Like I said, we do have some resources for you before we go. We've got this Google Drive. It's got the tracking template, also an example of that template filled in with data. We have some assessment data from our quiz and survey and some sample educational interventions as well. So we'll drop that link in the chat, and folks can hopefully begin using those resources. All right, this concludes the presentation portion of our time. We've tried various ways to understand and teach recycling, and we're evolving again. We hope this presentation will inspire you to take a closer look at the recycling contents and education on your campus as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jill and Amy. I think we're going to take 2 live questions here, and then we'll allow you to answer the rest of them in the Q&A function while Tyler gets going. So one of the first questions is, did you ever have interior recycling bins? And if so, what led to the switch to mostly exterior ones?
And the answer is yes. It has been a slow change from lots of interior bins, as many as possible, cardboard boxes to make them convenient in as many places as we could tuck them. And we have done a full sales switch and made, we're taking all of our interior bins. I believe in the upcoming year, we may eliminate the interior bins altogether. In this effort to make recycling more purposeful, all of our interior bins had no trash. Like, you're not allowed to put trash, personal trash, inside our dorms. And so it was causing lots of contamination problems because people just used it as a waste container. So we're hopeful that if we streamline it and make recycling more purposeful, make people go to the bin, that it might reduce some of our contamination problems.
Awesome. And then another question live is, can you talk more about how you set up the recycling competitions? And how does the campaign work, and how have students responded to this?
Sure. Yeah, we do. We work with our residential curriculum, which is through like our residential education side of housing. All of our building directors and RAs and stuff. And they help us implement the competition. We track recycling contamination. We track engagement opportunities. So like if people host a program in the lobby or put up a bulletin board, something like that. And we also track videos. We encourage our students to make short little recycling education videos. So those are the things we track and combine and have like sort of an artificial points structure. Do that. We've done it in conjunction with Recyclemania for many years, and we've actually just changed it and moved it to the fall, and it'll just be in October. Because we wanted to put all of our recycling education in the fall so people can get it up front and then recycle correctly for the rest of the year.
Makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Jill and Amy. So we do have a lot of questions in the Q&A section. So if you guys can answer those directly during the session, and then we'll move on to Tyler. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to hear from Tyler Kuss. Tyler Kuss is going into his junior year at Valparaiso University, pursuing an integrated business and engineering degree, as well as a minor in environmental engineering. He works both on campus and at businesses and K-12 schools in the surrounding community to promote reducing waste and better recycling practices. Welcome, Tyler.
Thanks. Let me share my screen here real quick. Okay. So today I'm going to be presenting about conducting waste audits and talking about our audit on campus, a little bit of background about what our office does. I'm not going to read through everything on this slide, but we do a lot with energy, landscaping, just general sustainability awareness, all kinds of events on campus, and then obviously waste and recycling, and much more. So I'm going to focus more on how you can do a waste audit than talk about our own waste audit, but I'll incorporate some of what we did on campus into these steps. So just to go through some of the basic steps here, first you have to learn what materials you actually can divert, communicate with others on your campus about current programs, observe recycling and waste behaviors currently, sort through some waste, suggest improvements and changes, and then obviously try and implement some of those changes. So first, learning about what material you can divert. This seems like it could be as easy as just looking on a list on your waste hauler's website, but we found that depending on who your hauler is and what area you're in, this can vary differently. And from some personal experience, actually at my high school, the waste hauler there we were using, on their website, they said we could recycle all kinds of things like styrofoam, all plastics 1 through 7, waxed cardboard, and all kinds of things that we couldn't. But they actually sold their material to a different material recovery facility. So it's important to trace the flow of your material and find out where it does actually end up, because different haulers selling the material, the different companies can have not updated lists. So we found that actually going out when they're emptying the dumpsters and talking to the driver of the recycling truck, asking him where he takes it, contacting the MRF directly, instead of the waste hauler, like the salesperson or something can help you. And you can see if they offer tours. These pictures here are some from tours of our local material recovery facility. And that's really educational to see what's happening in your material. So yeah, this is just a little diagram that we made for our campus that shows the flow of materials. And I do have a video link on here that's from our waste hauler. And I think it's actually the first video on YouTube if you just look up like sorting recycling. But that's a good video if you don't have an idea of what happens to recyclables, because a lot of people don't know what happens once they put it in the blue bin. So yeah, the next step I would say is communicate with others on your campus about what's currently going on. So that could be talking to your facilities team, the cleaning staff. It could vary from individual departments or from buildings to buildings. So to give an example of that, like for our campus, one of the things that varies a lot is how departments deal with shredded paper. So one department will have pickup from a company, another one will have their own personal shredder that they empty, another one will have pickup from a different company. So there can be things like that. And then in different areas too, like residence halls or academic buildings, dining facilities, they could all vary in who is in charge of trash and recycling. So you want to make sure that you talk to all of those different people. There may also be other programs you don't know about. So I put some examples on here, like things like move in and move out waste, electronic recycling, battery recycling, ink cartridge recycling. I know I've seen some schools have recycling for certain types of lab plastics or gloves, things like that. Food donations from your dining staff, scrap metal and construction waste, hazardous material, plastic film. I'm sure there's many other things. So as far as our waste audit goes, the first step that we started, and I guess to give a little background, we had never done any type of waste audit on our campus before. So we completed an audit last spring, started it about February, and nobody had really ever looked into waste and recycling. So we're part of facilities management, our office. So we talked with our building services team, asked for their observations, and then we went through and walked every single building, recorded the location of every single trash and recycling can. And we had this other list too that we went through. So you can see some of the things we look for. Waste audits, it's not just sorting through the trash, and I think that's what a lot of people focus on, but it's also what's producing the waste, what containers collect the waste, things like that. So we looked at vending machines, if there's bottle refilling stations in the buildings and how those two items affected the waste, number of students and staff per day to determine if all the bins that were in the building were necessary and how often they needed to be emptied. And like I said, we tracked the location of all the containers. We also had a checklist that had if they were contaminated, if there was any kind of signage on the bins, what items were discarded, if there was anything that there was a lot of in that bin or that we weren't seeing in that bin that we were seeing in other ones, how full the bag or how full the bins are, size of them, if they had the right sized liners. And then same thing with the dumpsters. We did dumpster audits. So driving around the morning before collection and looking if it was contaminated, how full it was, if we could reduce the amount of frequency of collection, things like that. You also want to observe things at special events too. So examples of this could be like meetings, any kind of outdoor event, sports event. And this picture here of all these plastic water bottles, that's from our, we call it Welcome Week, where all of our new students have orientation outside. And there was probably 10 tables of bottles like that. And that just looks bad for our image. And we didn't even have any recycling outside. So one of the things that we are focusing on this year is we ordered new recycling containers for outside events and sporting events and things like that. We also have this picture up here, the blue bin, that's part of our move out donation program. And you can see this picture was taken before our audit or before we implemented changes in our audit. And it's just a mess. It's not organized at all. And so this year we improved by adding things for food donations, specific spots for furniture donations and clothes, and separating things more like that. So after you do visual observations, I next recommend sorting some of the samples of waste and recycling. So we're a smaller campus. We have 2,000 to 3,000 students and about 15 buildings that we sort, about 30 active buildings, large buildings. So we selected a sample of about 15, and we sorted waste from a couple of dorms, a couple of academic buildings, the dining facility, and we just took samples of each of those buildings. And then you can multiply that by however many other buildings you have to try and get a full picture of the waste on your campus. We found that 1 week was a good time frame to get a full picture, since the building might be occupied different amounts on different days. Larger buildings such as residence halls, we only did for a day or two because it's the same type of trash. It's not going to vary that much by day. And then you'll want to find a sorting area. If it's the weather's nice outside, this could be outside. We used an old storage facility that we had on campus, but I'm sure you can find a spot that's good for you. And then coordinate with your cleaning or building services team about the logistics. So if they're going to be delivering the trash to the sorting facility, or if you're going to need to pick it up. And then this isn't on the slide, but you'll also want to think about if you want to collect all the trash for 1 week and sort it at one time, or sort it throughout the week. And that can depend on how much is being produced, how big the buildings are. So then you'll want to choose categories. So this could be very wide ranging. So you could just have trash recycling and compost if you have access to that, or you could break it down type by type. I'll give some examples from we did food, trash, paper, metal, glass, cardboard. And then we really wanted to focus on plastic. So we broke it down into 6 different plastic categories. So we had film plastic, plastic wrappers, which is things like chip bags or granola bar wrappers, plastic bottles, plastic cups, plastic lids, and then we also did any kind of small plastic or mixed material plastics, so things like those paper mailers that have bubble wrap on the inside would be a mixed material plastic. And then from sorting the waste and your visual observations, you want to suggest improvements, and this will obviously vary across campuses because all campuses are different. But I would say look for areas that have low diversion rates or large amounts of recycling in the trash. So I'll give a couple of examples. So when we talked to our building services team and when we audited, we found that every bag from every waste and recycling can was pulled every day. So you can see this picture here in the top right that one bag has, I think, like 2 Dr. Pepper bottles in it, and it's a 23-gallon bag for 2 plastic bottles. So you're wasting more on the bag than you are actually recycling those bottles. So that was a big change that we made. And I'll go into that in a further slide. We also found that many buildings had too many bins close together, again, leading to that problem of a couple items being discarded and those bags being wasted. The bags were not adequately sized for all bins, so we would have a 50-gallon bag in a 23-gallon bin, or a 23-gallon bag in a 10-gallon bin. We found our residence halls had a less than 5% diversion rate. So we're actually, I just unloaded today, 1,300 new recycling bins. We're going to be providing each room with their own recycling bin. And as I talked about a little bit earlier, the lack of recycling at outdoor events. So implementing some of these changes, we removed over 200 unnecessary waste and recycling containers. We're now only emptying them when they're more than half full. We're not providing staff with plastic liners for office trash or recycling bins. And the way that we're doing that is just encouraging them, if they have any sort of food waste, just bring it to the break room to the lined trash can, or in the hallway, there'll be a lined trash can. And then their office can would just be for things like tissues or non-food waste that can sit longer and not need to be lined. We're implementing recycling at outdoor events, festivals, tailgating, providing each residence hall room with their own recycling bin. This year we participated in the campus race to zero waste, or Recycle Mania, for the first time. which was really the first campus-wide movement to reduce waste, and the first thing that students knew about that we were doing, that we were promoting. We also expanded battery recycling in each building. We also got new signage on all of our waste and recycling bins that we put up. So we've hung these signs above all of our bins. We have a trash and recycling version. And something that we tried to do was tailor the signs to the area that they were placed in. So you can see some examples here for the residence halls, academic buildings, and athletics. So for example, in the residence halls, you see things like razors or hangers or dishware, toothbrushes that are added. In athletics, you have things like tape. And then we broke down into only the types of packaging that we serve there, since you can't bring in outside food or drink. So like the lid that we have there and that plastic nacho tray, that's like the types of things that we use. So we wanted to make it very clear and easy. And then just get creative. There's many free or cheap ways that you can implement things like this. So just a couple of free initiatives that we did on our campus was that our local grocery store provided us with paper shopping bags that we collect our tailgating recycling in, which works out good for them because they get advertisement from the logo on their bags, tailgaters. And then actually our local Chick-fil-A gave us a bunch of these green 5-gallon buckets. We have over 50 of those, I think, that we got, which we now use as battery and electronic recycling collection containers. So yeah, that's all I had. If you have any questions about any of this, you can feel free to reach out to me. And then on our website, we also have our full audit report, which goes way more in depth on everything we did in campus. And there's also resources on our website for how to do your own audit as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Great job, Tyler. I want to take a couple questions from the audience, and then we'll have some time that, Tyler, you can type in your answers as well as we close some things up. So one question that came up is, can you discuss how you got institutional support to complete waste audits, especially for a larger campus-wide effort? And did you have any troubles with your current position?
So the funding so the program originally started, me and another intern were actually funded by our local county's recycling district. Now I'm hired on by the university, but that program was started more for community outreach, but that's what we did the audits under, being paid by that as well. But I'm part of the facilities management team now. So in our Office of Sustainability, we're under facilities management. So they were really wanting to do this because they're the ones that are emptying and pulling all the trash. So they wanted to see that data and see what improvements could be made.
Excellent. So going on to that, so how does your facilities team collect the recycling from cans with no liner?
So we do use liners. Sorry, I might have misspoke there, but we only pull them when they're 50% full now. Oh, you meant from the offices? Yeah, the offices, the staff have to empty it themselves. So they would just bring in the bins to the break room or the hallway receptacle and dump it in there themselves.
Awesome. And then one last question. So Tyler, where are you sending the batteries, and how are you sending them safely since they are collected in a big bucket?
The batteries are picked up by our local county recycling district. So when they're full, the staff in the building just submits a work order to us, and then we pick them up and take them to a central location. And then the county comes like once a month or something like that and picks them up.
Excellent. And I guess since these questions are coming in pretty quickly, I'll give you one last one. So
Sure.
Plastic bags are not recyclable. So why are they being used to collect recyclables?
So our hauler, and this was one of those things that can be confusing too, because they went back and forth on this, but our hauler will accept recycling if it's in clear plastic bags, because they can see that the contents are recyclable, and they actually have a machine at the start of the line that rips it open. But again, that's one of those things that you really want to communicate with your hauler specifically on, and they went back and forth depending on who we were talking to until we eventually got to the plant manager who told us there is a machine that would rip those open.
Excellent. Cool. So I think there's just a couple other questions for you, Tyler, to ask, and I think we'll move on to the end of the show.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you all for attending today's session. It looks like we're at the end, so this has been quite an engaging, inspiring presentation and discussion. I hope that you all leave today with the ideas and tools to conduct waste audits at your organizations. So as I mentioned, today's webinar was the third in our 2023 webinar series. The next webinar will be on August 17th on the topic of food recovery, not composting. We hope you will join us, and the remaining topics for 2023 are financially sustainable models for recycling programs and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. If you would like to share your institution's work on this topic, please submit a proposal via the webinar presenter interest form at www.kirk3r.org. There you will find the slides and recordings from today's webinar and past webinars. So please join me one last time in thanking Jill, Amy, and Tyler and for their presentations today. And once again, I'd like to thank Jill and greeneducation.us for sponsoring today's webinar. We've put a link to the website in the chat for greeneducation.us as well. So again, thank you all for attending today's webinar. And again, resources are available on our website, so stay tuned. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.